So here we are. This is the final reading of a chapter, the last chapter of a book I wrote back in the 1990s. And I just want to say a quick word before I read this chapter. One, I am so grateful that you're watching, even if this is the first day that you've watched, or if you've been with me all along for every chapter. One thing, I am going to post these on my YouTube channel, and I'll create a playlist and make that available in the comments just in case you or anyone you know might need a little bit of hope anytime along the way. You can share that. But also want to say something about why I am doing this. It is not easy for me. I'm a 1 on the Enneagram, if you're familiar with that. I'm a perfectionist. I like to refer to it as the improver. But a part of that means it's not easy for me to put myself out there or to share anything, because I am, always wondering if what I do measures up, if it matters, if it's making a difference. I've got this inner critic, this voice in my head that's always second guessing myself. And so it's hard to put things out there. So I carried this book around in a digital format for nearly a decade. Before one Thanksgiving weekend in 2008, I was at my dad's and we were having this conversation. I had been reading a book by Erwin McManus called Wide Awake. And one of the things, and I mentioned this in the introduction, before I read the introduction of the book way back then, but that he challenged everybody that everyone's carrying around something in their lives that you need to put out there, you need to share, you need to birth it and make it come alive. And I had been doing that with this book, but I was afraid to do anything with it. So my dad encouraged me. We found this website called lulu.com and we self-published it, and we just made it available for free. I'll put that in the comments. But also, recently I thought, why not be brave again? In this age of social media, the various platforms, and the ability to go live on things like Facebook Live or Instagram and YouTube, why not do a reading of the book as read by the author? Just in case it might help someone. Because I do believe we're living in an age and time that's not much different from the 1990s, and it's not much different from any generation, because we live in a world that feels like there is no hope. But I'm here to tell you there is. It's just not found in the things and the places that we think it should be. It is only found in God. It is found in His Son, Jesus Christ. And so that is why I wrote this book, and that's why I am sharing it again all these years later. And by the way, I have uploaded these chapters on my YouTube page. I'll create a playlist and I'll put those in the comments in case you want to go back to them later. So here we are, the last chapter, Mission Impossible. The subtitle, The Choice is Yours. I'll read it a little quickly since I took longer in the introduction. There were more than a few obstacles on the road to accomplishing this mission. The mission, the Father simply wanted to be with His children. He wanted to bring hope to a hopeless world. It seemed to be an impossible mission because in order for the children to be with the Father, they would have to be holy. After the catastrophe in the garden, this seemed out of the question. From that point, God's children seemed to be on a downward spiral. One only has to be reminded of the wickedness that led to the flood. Every inclination of the thoughts of man's heart was only evil all the time. Not much has changed since then, except the promise that instead of water, it would be fire that would wipe away the wicked the next time. If man's wicked ways weren't enough, the world was now controlled by Satan himself. John reminds us of this fact with these frightening words: the whole world is under the control of the evil one. A Savior was needed. It would take much more than Ethan Hunt to accomplish this mission. How would one describe the possibility of this one ending favorably? Hopeless? Contrary to reason? Inconceivable? Unimaginable? Unthinkable? Unachievable? Unattainable? Out of the question? Something that is sure not to happen? At first glance, one would say that it was impossible. Let's briefly look at only a few of the obstacles along the path. Everyone, including themselves, would agree that the two were way past the childbearing age. She was 90 years old. Him, try 100 years old. That's pretty old. In fact, one writer simply says he was as good as dead. Yet, they were told they would have a child and that all the nations would be blessed through his seed. Impossible? No doubt laughter seemed to be the only appropriate response to such an inconceivable idea. I imagine they thought this scenario was out of the question. The man who laughed then is known today as Father Abraham. After more than 400 years, they seem to be standing on the edge of the cliff, literally with no place to go, surrounded by an army of soldiers on one side and a body of water on the other. They seem to have no chance. The likelihood of survival was growing dimmer with each moment. God's children would certainly be wiped out. Their chances of escape seemed to be impossible. It would have been if it were not for the angel of God. God caused the waters to divide and his children safely passed through on dry ground to the other side. Moses provides a good commentary of the event that leaves no question as to who delivered the Israelites. That day the Lord saved Israel from the hands of the Egyptians. Moses stretched out his hand while God revealed his heart for his children. The times were depressing. The period was known as the Dark Ages of Hebrew history. Apostasy, decline, disorder, and demoralization are words that appropriately characterize these times. It was a time of decline in all areas of life. It was a time of compromise. The dominant theme of that era, according to the judges, was every man did what was right in his own eyes. Could anything of lasting good come out of that era? The chances seemed to be near impossible. However, it was during this time period of hate that we find a wonderful story of love. It's the story of a husband and wife who have two sons. A famine caused this family to leave their homeland. While in a foreign country, the two sons each married a native of that land. In time, the father and two sons died. The mother and two daughters-in-law survived. The mother decided to return to her old home. She offered each of them a chance to return to their families. Eventually, one did. The other one declared her loyalty to her mother-in-law and went with her. Through a series of events, this one daughter-in-law later remarried. At first glance, this marriage seemed to be inconsequential. In fact, it would be centuries later before the bright spot of this dark era would be made known. However, the book that contains this love story gives some insight into the hope that would come through a dark world. Don't miss it. It is simply stated like this in Ruth 4. Boaz, the father of Obed, Obed, the father of Jesse, and Jesse, the father of David. Did you catch it? It was through the family of Ruth, the loyal daughter-in-law, and her new husband Boaz, who happened to be a descendant of Father Abraham, that the Messiah would come. Don't miss the symbolism here. Even during the darkest periods, hope is possible. An empty womb, an army of soldiers, a sea of water. The dark ages were just some of the obstacles along the way. These seem to be minute compared with the obstacle that was to come. This one took place at a garbage dump outside of Jerusalem at a place called the Skull. The scene seemed to bring absolute defeat. The promised Savior had come, but now he was on a cross. The mission, it seemed, would have to be aborted. Satan would win. The mission would indeed be labeled impossible. That is, if the outcome were up to mere mortals. But thanks to God, the story didn't end at Golgotha. Because Jesus arose from the grave, we too have the opportunity to be with our Father. Impossible? Jesus said it best himself. With man, this is impossible, but with God, all things are possible. Love that. Although these words were spoken in another setting, the implication of these words ring loud and clear when set against the backdrop of the cross. Satan did not see it coming. He thought he had won. Yes, it was on the cross that the Father snatched his children out of the hands of the evil one. The unholy could now become holy. The impossible became possible. The mission hasn't changed today. The Father wants to be with his children. He still provides hope to the hopeless. But the choice is yours. And I imagine the Father's charge would go something like this. If you choose to accept this mission and are caught or wounded, you can be assured that I will never disavow my loyalty for you. I'll always be awaiting your return. And don't worry, this message will not self-destruct in 5 seconds. With all my blessings, your Father. P.S. Always remember that what seems to be an obstacle to you is only an opportunity for God. He enjoys for our sake taking that which seems to be impossible and making it possible. And here's the last sentence in the book. He really is our only hope. So there you have it, folks. The last reading from a book that I once wrote called Where is the Hope? And by the way, this is probably the only physical copy of it in the world, but it is free and available as a PDF. I pray and hope that these readings have been helpful, and that if you or anyone you know ever feels like you have no hope, may you never forget that there is hope, and his name is Jesus. Thanks again for following along. I hope and pray you have a great day. Take care. Grace and peace to you.